Hi everyone, welcome back. So first, we're going to kick off with the Liveable Streets inquiry. Last week, and I talked about the idea of us going area by areas, but this week we're just going to go through the details of it. And the details is that we're going to have 4 hearings, and the first one we're going to kick it off is basically in Wapping, Thursday the 25th of February 2021. So these are Zoom meetings where Andrew and I and Rabina, who's going to join us, we're going to hold a panel, hopefully aided by experts, just to hear your point of view as residents. Virtual hearings. So the first one's going to be Wapping, Thursday, 25th of February, 2021. Then we're going to go to Bethnal Green, Weavers, Wards and St. Peter's, Thursday, 18th of March, 2020, and then move to Bow, the Roman Road area, Thursday, 8th of April. And then finally, we're going to hit Shadwell and Whitechapel on the 20th of May. And the idea is to get your views as residents as to what you feel is wrong with the way the consultation has been done, the way these schemes have been implemented. Do you feel that you've been discriminated against? Do you feel that you haven't had your input? What we'd like to do is actually explore 4 questions. 4 key questions. Was it in getting your submissions and explore this question? Was there any direct discrimination? Was there indirect discrimination? Was there a breach of contract by the council contractor? And is Tower Hamlets Council in breach of their public sector's equalities duty? So the council's is obliged, has a statutory duty to meet the Equalities Act, where it can't discriminate against certain protective characteristics, which is age, disability, gender, faith, race, and other protective characteristics, directly or indirectly, and whether it's carried out its duty in carrying out equality impact assessments. So Andrew, do you want to go through what the kind of issues what's come across your table, or what you'd like to find out in terms of holding these virtual hearings area by area?
So yes, basically what we want to try and do is find out what the impact is on people's actually daily lives, because these are potentially big changes, and you want to find out what your experience of them is. And so, for example, I've been reading this week a very interesting report by an organization called Transport for All, which is basically a sort of disabled organization. And they basically talk to disabled people across the UK. And they wrote this report called Pave the Way. And, and the findings from that are really interesting. And so disabled people themselves, some are supportive of this and some are anti this. But what they also report is actually just how polarized opinions are within the disabled community on this, and that reflects the wider community. I think we need to find some way past that polarization and that division, and find a common way forward that's within the law, which I think is another key point in the coming weeks.
Well, there's a recent judgment with Camden Council where they quashed their Liveable Streets scheme because it was brought by a disabled resident who said that it discriminated against them on the basis of disability and age. And then you've had Sutton Council roll back their program. So it seems like council after council, following the TfL judgment, are reviewing their schemes and seems like holding the opinion that the way they've been rolled out has been illegal. What's your take on these latest developments?
So my concern is that the way in which this was done and the speed that this was done may, and I emphasize the word may, have broken the law. And certainly we saw that with the Transport for London scheme, where they lost in the High Court to the taxi drivers. And there's some observations about that as well. I think, a key point to make is, for example, the disabled community, they do support LTNs and some of the changes which LTNs are kind of bringing in terms of increase of independence and easier and more pleasant journeys. But they also detail the negative impacts on disabled residents. And reality in this country is that we have laws to protect people. And we also have laws to protect disabled people. So you can't just ride roughshod over those. you have to follow the law and all of the guidance on that. And our concern about the process of how this has been undertaken makes me worried about whether we've taken some of these considerations into account or not. And the end output of this, whatever we do, has to be done within both the letter and the spirit of the law.
Well, the interesting thing is, when I spoke to the UTAG, the organization that took TfL to court, believe it or not, the whole thing kicked off with the Wapping busgate. So when Tower Hamlets Council implemented the busgate, there's all these issues that came about where they haven't taken account of the impact it has on elderly and disabled residents who are reliant on taxis. This is the thing. A lot of people don't like private hire or black cab taxis are seen as essential public transport, and those factors haven't been taken into account. And they actually were raising the funds to actually challenge Tower Hamlets Council, and then the COVID happened and TfL implemented their schemes and they directed it towards challenging TfL scheme. But the interesting thing is that they first got galvanized by the actions of Tower Hamlets Council. So that is the interesting thing, that is sort of like more or less going around a full circle. And they do have interesting insight into what happened in Wapping. And they did express interest that they will sort of like fully participate in the hearing to give that view. But it just seems like it's so top-down heavy, this whole thing. It seems like it seems a very sort of like power. There's that book by about Robert Moses in New York, who basically he had this vision of New York, and he just basically built motorways through entire neighborhoods, not taking account of the impact. And it seems like we've got mini Robert Moseses all over London boroughs. This kind of top-down approach to things. Is that your experience of just looking into or speaking to people, that it seems to be very top-down, kind of power broker orientated way of doing things?
Yes, because Robert Moses is a fascinating character, and there's apparently this very good biography about him that's been reviewed or came out recently, and I wish I had the time to read it. And basically, I think the argument was the pendulum swung too much towards the motor car in cities, and especially Robert Moses, was too pro car. And my concern is that we're now maybe flipped too far the other way, and we need to find somewhere more in the sort of, well, maybe not in the middle, but certainly, towards what residents actually want. And that's where we have to listen to residents. And what makes Wapping so interesting is what residents thought they were going to get, and what they responded to in the consultation was very different from what they got at the end. And I think what residents wanted, which was a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week bus gate, which allowed residents and taxis and buses through, but not other vehicles, is actually better than what we ended up with, which is what the council imposed, which is basically a much shorter bus gate, in the morning, in the afternoon, but only allowing buses through. And they then later sort of compromised, and I think are now allowing disabled residents through, but still not taxis. And I still think the 24-hour, 7-day-a-week bus gate in Wapping, which is what residents wanted, and the vast majority who responded to the consultation, is a better solution than a shorter bus gate.
It seems quite ideological, just talking to, just having conversations behind the scenes. It seems kind of, it's very sort of like anti-car. It's like, instead of looking at sort of like impact, sort of like outcomes and those kind of things, it seems like we need to kill the car kind of thing, which I don't drive. I ride a bike, but it just seems kind of like this irrational kind of thing that cars are bad in themselves, without looking at them as a utility. And they have outcomes. Some of them are negative, some of them are positive, and it's balancing out those positive and negative externalities and seeing how do we nuance to get the maximum positive but get as minimal negative. It just seems like that, because talking to people like, why aren't we pushing electric cars kind of ish if we want to reduce pollution, but why are we just eliminating an entire mode of transport? That's the feedback I'm getting back from people, and people want to drive electric cars, but they just can't afford it. And they're saying, look, if we had the financial help, then we wouldn't be driving around older cars that pollute more. But where is that help, etc., etc.? Have you had what's your take? Why aren't we pushing electric cars around here?
Well, because I've been lucky enough to actually drive an electric car. It was actually a Tesla S, which obviously it's pretty top there. And but I was hugely impressed by my short drive of a Tesla S. And so I think electric cars are the future. And I think this is one of the problems that we have with cars. Cars are changing, and I think will change quite fast. Yes, I mean, there is this transition problem, but the new Volkswagen Golf, in effect, is an electric car. I saw my first one a couple of weeks ago, and they will start to come onto the second-hand market in 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time. And I think things will move quite quickly. And I think part of the other problem with the car is that when we think of car use, we kind of think, I think too often, it's like people commuting on a Monday morning from home to the office, and London can't cope with lots of people doing that in their cars. And I 100% agree with that. The question is more about, it's a mother going to basically load up with shopping on a Tuesday afternoon, and on a Wednesday morning she's then going to dropping off her her grandfather at the local doctors. So there's much more kind of local journeys that people are making, either because of heavy goods that they lots of shopping that they're carrying, or they're carrying elderly parents. It's that kind of car use I don't think we've really confronted. And the impression given is that we don't want any cars, but the reality is that some people do need cars and have legitimate need for cars at certain times of the week, even if we do want to discourage their use 5 days a week for commuting purposes.
Yeah, so I think this thing's gonna rumble on and on. We're gonna publish the details of these inquiries. We're gonna come down to Wapping first, so watch out, guys. Keep your eyes out for that. If you live in Wapping or live around Wapping, get involved. Come down, tell us what happened, tell us how you feel, and tell us what you want as well. Tell us post-COVID as well, because of the impact of COVID. Has your use of cars or the local streets changed, and what do you think we should do post-COVID? How should we use our streets in a post-COVID world where more and more people are working from home? How do we use that space? But we're gonna go into a break soon, but we're gonna post the information, so keep your eyes out, and look forward to hearing from you. First stop, Wapping. But after the break, we're going to discuss nitrous oxide, the consultation around that, laughing gas canisters, silver canisters, and we're also going to discuss the smash and grab at Truman's on Brick Lane. But after we're going to just go into a short commercial break now. Thank you.